Hello, everybody. This is Noah and John, and we are from UrbanDigs. And today we're talking Manhattan, Johnny. And I'm very, very proud to have Steve Dawson Robert Varvara of the Dawson Robert Team over at Compass. These guys do great production. These guys are active in the field. They tell it like it is, Johnny. It's the exact kind of character type I want for this show. So let's just get right into it. I think I'm gonna go with Steve. Steve first. High level, this market is changing, it's shifting. Do me a favor, in your own words, tell everyone what you see is going on in the front lines.
Yeah, thanks, Noah, for having us. And I think the reality of the market is it's changing so quickly that it's really caught people off guard. And I think we work at all price points, from studios to penthouses, townhouses, and the market has shifted so quickly in all of those classes that I think there's a little bit of a catch up in terms of what's going on with pricing, days on market. And so we're actively working with our buyers saying, hey, look, you might have a little bit more negotiability now. And also our sellers saying, hey, look, you might have to be more negotiable. And so it's ever changing. I would say the high end of the market in the last couple of weeks, we've really seen slow down. And I think that's directly due to the stock market and just what's happened over the last month.
Yeah, we got like a negative stock market effect over here. I mean, we have like these rising rates going on right now. I mean, do you feel like the market is still trying to find its way? Or do you think that it's showing any signs of maybe, all right, we shifted, we were there, now we're here, we've stabilized here, or we're still, again, we're moving, we're still trying to find our way?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a question of what price point and what inventory levels are like, because talk about 2 bedrooms on the Upper West Side, those are still moving incredibly quickly because there's no inventory. Mm-hmm. But if you talk about 1 bedrooms on the Upper East Side, it's a different story. They're a dime a dozen and they're slower. So it really depends on where and the price point, I think. And there's definitely a level of stabilization, but I still think we're finding our way. It's too early to tell.
Right. So Rob, let me shift to you, because Steve talked about the market shift. So I'll ask you about how that shift is playing out in shifting conversations, and specifically sell side conversations. I mean, how are you talking to sellers right now, especially new sellers, talking about pricing today, and how are you managing those expectations given what Steve was talking about, which is that some markets have no inventory, so it's a little bit easier to sell, and some markets are struggling a little bit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think exactly what you said. It's managing expectations. I think we were shot out of a cannon in 2021. We saw things flying off the shelf, bidding wars, especially in neighborhoods in prime Brooklyn, Park Slope, Brooklyn Heights, Cobble Hill, and all throughout Manhattan. And as Steve said, things shifted very quickly. So the conversation we're having as sellers is we're not there right now. And the idea of aspirational pricing, of listing it here, hoping to get here, we're no longer there. So if you want to sell in this environment where there's just a lot of uncertainty, it's the conversations we're having are really coming on and pricing things correctly. And we have a fair amount coming on over the next couple months, and that's the conversations we've had with people. I also think there's, because of the limited inventory, there's also a flight to quality right now. So a conversation that we're having with a lot of our sellers is, what can you do to prepare your apartment to make it stand out? Normally, we would not advise someone renovating and putting a lot of money in before listing the property. But now the conversations we're having are, all right, maybe we should change out that kitchen countertop or put in a new backsplash, definitely stage the place. It's important to stand out now.
Exactly. Right. And so if I could just follow up on that, I'm just curious, are you finding sellers at all surprised at what their value might be, or what the days on market you're suggesting might be these days?
I think they are. I'm finding that because there's not a lot of inventory, as a result, they're saying, well, look at my property. There's not a lot that compares to this. There's really nothing. So why we're getting the showings, we're getting people in. I still feel like there are people out there looking and being active, but not a lot of people are actionable. I'm finding it's a lot of window shopping right now. So I think it's kind of giving sellers hope on one end, and they're getting people in the door, but we're not getting the offers.
Hey, Rob, I want to stay on this sentiment 1 second before I go to the next question here. And you said actionable, right? They're not being actionable. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So in my mind, okay, there's two big thoughts that sellers are thinking about. Number one, should I wait this out? Do I sell now? Do I list now? It's June 29th. We're about to go into July 4th holiday weekend. And then we got July and August, and September, I guess. Or do I wait, right? And we don't know what the market's gonna be like in 3 months. Or do I consider renting this thing if I can? So are these things that sellers are considering right now or not really? Because logically that makes sense.
Yeah.
Rental part at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Noah, to your point, the sellers are making all of those kind of decisions and thought processes. And I think it really depends on the price point. So high end, there's not necessarily the motivation or need to sell. They might want to sell, but not at any price. And, they might not want to rent, but at the kind of sub 4 million category, renting's a great option. If you are in a condo and you can rent your apartment out for 25-30% more than you could a year or two ago, that's a great option if this market for sale is slowing, which it is. And so we're having those conversations and trying to really advise the best course based on the property and the client.
Yeah. So that 4 million mark. Sorry, Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
That 4 million mark. That's the key. That's where you're seeing kind of, all right, it works down here, but it doesn't really kind of work up here.
No, I think the 4 million mark is just in Manhattan, where we are defining as the high end of the market, right? So I think
Gotcha.
the logic and the thought process changes on the ultra high end, especially where, yes, maybe they could rent their apartment, but maybe they don't want to, right? I mean,
Gotcha.
They just want somebody else coming in for a year or two and messing up a very high end renovation that then they have to fix when they do end up selling, versus somebody who's not as, call it precious about the apartment and just really wants that return.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that's something that, not to continue this point too long, but I think it's a great point that not a lot of folks necessarily take into account, which is that if you're all set up and ready to sell and you decide to rent, you're right, you're bringing an unknown equation, and then your apartment might not, whatever your lease term is, 2 years, 1 year, 2 year, it might not be the same apartment ready to sell after that period of time. That's a great point. Steve, if I could shift, I just want to talk about price reduction. And can you walk us through some price reduction strategies in the market right now, especially if you have like stubborn sellers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And as I mentioned before, with the market changing as quickly as it did this spring into now summer, it's caught us as agents, sellers off guard in some respects, where, we went into the marketing strategy feeling very confident on pricing. And now we have to do an about face and say, look, like the reality of it is we had a deal, it fell apart. We haven't had any offers. And I think the proof is in the pudding. So quantifying for our clients, look, this is how many showings we've had. We've had 2 offers that didn't work out. We've had 0 offers, and really just giving them the data so that they can understand where the market, and really in each case, the sub-market that they fall within, is operating, and how many other deals are happening in that price point, or are none happening. Because, I think with a price reduction strategy, the worst thing you can do is reduce the price and have nothing happen. And so, that's just like the kiss of death. And so in a market like we're in now, I think it's an art, of course. It's not a science in some senses, but it's deciding, does it make sense? Is that price reduction going to do what we want it to, which is to sell the property? Or are we going to just really be sitting there and nothing happening still. So it's a very fluid situation, I would say, at this point.
Right. And that's a great point, because I think a lot of folks, a lot of agents, when they're ready to bring a property to market, right, it's you're getting everything set up. Perhaps there's a broker preview, maybe there's a sushi lunch, right? You're trying to build this anticipation. So when that apartment hits, especially in the last year or so, when there's been a lack of inventory, right, it gets that attention pop. And I'm curious, after a price reduction, especially in this market, how can you recapture buyer attention, especially, given the context that inventory is, it's building, albeit slowly, but the market shifted. And I'm just curious if there's a way, aside from price reduction, you can still grab attention.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and it's something we grapple with constantly. I feel like a price reduction has to be strategic in the sense of the amount, when you're doing it, and how it's communicated to the market. And all of those things have to come together to really create that bump again of interest. And so, the thing that I think happens a lot in our business is we as agents get scared to ask for the big price reduction that we honestly need based on the market conditions. Yeah. And so it's really, again, going back to the data and explaining and narrating the situation in a way that the seller really understands, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I should really do it. Yeah. And let's maximize that price reduction. Whereas like just going down, 50,000, 100,000, depending on the price point. And then
half of 1%.
Right. Just a little,
I mean, you can't tickle it. You can't tickle something like this. You need to go scratch it and dig deep and get in there. Sellers, I got to tell you, I can imagine the confusion on sell side. I mean, I'm sure they see what's going on out there, but they're also looking at comps from December, January, February, March that are closing, and maybe they see something in their building that's relevant to them, and like, this guy just got 2.5. What do you mean I'm only getting 2 right now, or there is no bid right now? I don't understand. And I always thought, the price reduction, right? This conversation. This is one of those things that sellers want to know about, but they never ask. Because why would they ask a broker and have have them? I want the broker to sell it. I want them to sell it at my asking price. I don't want to talk about a price reduction. But they always think deep down inside is like, all right, if I do have to do a price reduction, how much do you think I'm going to have to do? And when do we do it? And I always thought that conversation is best to have right in the beginning. Right in the beginning of the listen, because hey, listen, we priced this thing wrong. Here's what day 48, and 4.8% or something like that. That's what sellers are doing to get deals done. But enough with sellers. All right, the sellers are going to have to deal with their own. You know what? We put out sales calls, right? If you heard it, you heard it. But sellers are going to have to deal with this shift. And if you're selling in the next 90 days, you got to make some serious decisions. Let's go to buyers. I want to ask buyers real quick. I'll keep this open for either of you guys. What are your buyers thinking right now?
They're feeling a little more empowered, I would say, even with stock market volatility, even with rising interest rates, and many other headwinds that we're facing in New York. I think they're starting to feel the tide shift a little bit, the buyers I'm working with. And they're seeing inventory open up a little bit, depending on where they're looking. So I definitely think there's more positivity than there has been on the buy side. I still don't think, with a lot of the buyers we're working with, I don't think that urgency is there, unless there is an immediate need to move. Like you need a bigger place and you need to get out, or, your child's going to school on the Upper East Side and you need to move from Tribeca immediately. Like, unless I still feel that the urgency is not there with buyers, even with, the looming interest rates going up further. But there's more positivity than there has been.
Yeah. I mean, I would also just add that this morning, I was kind of thinking back about buyers who hadn't pulled the trigger, who either got frustrated by the market and sat on the sidelines, or just really for one reason or another didn't end up buying. This is going to become a really good time for us as agents to reach back out to those buyers and say, hey, things are
Right.
swinging around in your favor, this could be a good time. Again, market dependent, right? Like if you're looking for, I use this example because we've had a lot of experience with this lately, but a 2-bedroom on the Upper West Side, no, it's still very competitive. You're not getting that that discount maybe. But if you're in a 3-bedroom condo, maybe there's a better opportunity now.
Yeah. Right. And I'm glad you said it because I like this phrase buyer empowerment. I think that's exactly what's happening right now. And I don't, and it's not that the prices have really crashed or anything like that. I mean, the market's just a little bit slower, and you're exactly right. Buyers have a chance to sort of see things on their own schedule, negotiate, right? It's just, they have a little bit more power. It's great. Now, the next step, of course, is buyer liberation, in which case, buyers are completely in control of the market. And I don't think we're there yet, but we have been hearing, and no, I think you've heard this too. And I'm curious, Rob, Steve, if you guys have seen this, but, buyers at the closing table saying, the market shifted down. I'd like a little bit of a credit because, I'd like, another 2% off. And I'm curious if we have heard this, and I think it's a little premature, but I'm curious if that's something that you've seen as well, either from the sell side or the buy side.
It's not something I've experienced at the closing table, but I do have a few contracts out right now. 2 of them being at new developments where we are renegotiating our deal. And even though we agreed the contract terms, deal sheet went out, we have gone back to the sponsor and we have said things have shifted. And we need a little bit more. We need a little bit more in closing costs. And we want you to do a little bit of work in the apartment. And there was a lot of pushback from the sponsor at first, but now they're coming back to us and they're saying, okay, how can we work this out?
Yeah, no, I this is such an amazing topic. And I just want to say, guys, listen, it's great intel on the front lines, but not every developer is going to be in a situation to do this. So I don't want listeners to think, oh, this is a blanket statement.
No.
Yeah, it's very, very clear to say this kind of thing. And you know what? There's a risk. I want everyone to know. You guys could negotiate and it may go sour, it may go another way. Maybe the deal gets a little hairy. Who knows? That could happen. So if you can pull it out, fantastic, but also know what the deal is you got in place. And you know what? I just want to reiterate something. The buyer empowerment that Rob mentioned, I love that. And Johnny, the buyer liberation, I absolutely love that, because that is, if you think about the message that we've been giving out, right? We've been giving sell calls out, but the message to the buyers was, guys, get ready. Get ready. And now, like, if you're telling me that they're feeling empowered, they're telling that they're getting interested, then you guys are obviously doing your job and your messaging correctly to tell them what's going on with the market, because those are the ones that are going to pull the trigger when the blood gets on the streets.
Yeah.
And all the other buyers get a little afraid and step back and they miss it. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, I just one other point I would counter with is, will there be blood on the street? Right. Like, I think the fundamentals of this market are very different than previous downturns, where we had a huge supply that needed to be absorbed. I don't think we're there. I don't necessarily think that we are going to have that, because the supply was absorbed so quickly in the last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah. And sorry, Johnny, I know you have a question. And we did not see a parabolic 50, 60, 70% rise like the majority of other housing markets. And we are not at full capacity. And the rental market's back online now. Maybe that brings investors in. We're slowly getting back. So we're going to be moving forward in time. Yeah. Repairing and healing back to full capacity while the other markets have been. So,
and we don't have international buyers. Buyers.
We need them back online. That's going to
right. I mean, so that they haven't come back into the mix really yet, in our opinion. So
So and that's a great segue. Let's talk about the rental market and the investor market, which includes a lot of the international buyers. I'm just curious, what that market's looking like. From your point of view, we haven't seen any kind of uptick in investor sentiment toward New York City yet.
It is, I mean, on the investor side, as someone who, works with a fair amount of domestic and international investors as well, it has been quiet on the investor front. I mean, I'll say we had a multifamily in the Village. We have a couple more off market that we market, and there has been very little appetite and very little interest from investors unless it's very appealing. So, the rental market is I think we've seen a little bit, it cool off a teeny bit, but that is still on fire. We don't handle a ton of rental inventory, but the ones that we have put on for clients in condos and co-ops for rent that don't want to sell right now, we're typically renting it within a week or two of listing it.
Yeah. I would say I would add one kind of case study that I find interesting in the last year in the investor market is domestic investors selling portfolios in markets that have gotten incredibly overheated and prices have doubled wherever, and that money coming into New York as a generational transition from one generation of that real estate family to the other, and they're selling in 1031ing into New York property. And we've had a couple of clients doing that. And so,
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, and that's kind of maybe the one bright spot is domestic investors transitioning or selling portfolios in markets that have been super hot and bringing that money into New York.
I love that play. I'm sorry, I couldn't contain myself. I almost was. I love that play. And I mean, we're going to get dragged into this, but relatively speaking, there's probably not going to be as violent a corrective force here. Listen, we're running out of time. All right, we're not going to have time for the final two questions, but I want to sneak the last question in because it's important. Okay, I know you guys do a lot of production, and thank you for sharing your insights and strategies. Let's end. Maybe there are agents out there that are less productive than you guys that are trying to find their way. Maybe they're new. Maybe they haven't experienced a slowdown before. So rather than waste time and have to learn a year from now, what could you tell these categories of agents to do now that will help them down the road?
Yeah, I mean, I come from the Tom Ferry world, and which was a fantastic program for me, especially when I was a new agent. And when I started, it was a similar cycle. And I think, this being in this market and in a buyer's, as we're shifting into this market, it's great for agents and for outreach. My advice is, make sure you're calling your database, make sure you're talking to any buyers or directs you've met over the last 2 years that were maybe hesitant to purchase. This is a great time for them to enter the market. And I think it's just about market knowledge and consistent follow-up with the people you've spoken to.
I would just say I got into the business during the Great Recession, and you had to pound the pavement. You had to really work. And I think it's hard for a new agent right now who's gotten into the business during this uptick, because it can seem like, oh, it's really easy to get clients, and it has been, and it's really easy to get things sold because it has been. That's changing. And so you have to use the market conditions as a cue to how to follow up with that network, I think, and really take every opportunity. I started working open houses for other agents. That's how I built my business. And, so if you're a new agent and things are slowing down, reach out, ask other agents if they need help. Because it's a great way to just be in the market, experiencing what's happening while also networking.
These are fantastic points. So if I could just summarize, I think both of you mentioned the idea of that personal touch with it, whether you're out pounding the pavement or actually picking up a telephone, pushing numbers on that phone and speaking to another human being, right? That's sort of what you need to do in this down market. And I also completely agree that just, being out there and experiencing it is you need to understand it from a frontline position. These are awesome points. Thank you.
Yeah. And I would just add, use this time to be an advisor. Don't be a broker, be an advisor. Let them make their decision when the time comes. You guide them the right way, and they will truly appreciate it at the end of the day. This has been awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve Dawson. Thank you, Rob Varvara of the Dawson Varvara team over at Compass. I hope you guys got a lot of actual insights out of this. Thank you, John Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. We're both from UrbanDigs, and this has been Talking Manhattan. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.